We're coming off one of the best rounds we've ever seen. Can we back it up this weekend with some more crackers? Probably not. But you never know. We're going to go through all round 10 matches coming your way this weekend. Hopefully find you some winners. Stick around. Enjoy. This is the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. Hope you enjoy. Welcome on in to the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode number 31 for season 2025. And today we're going to be previewing round 10 action. It's coming up starting as of today at time of release of this video / podcast. So yeah, we're going to be going through all 9 matches coming up this weekend. We'll do our tips at the end as we always do. We'll have a look at the All Aussie Rules win percentages as well for each team. So that's coming up later in this episode. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow, whichever platform you're listening to this on, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Spotify, or over on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for being here. Hope you enjoy the content. This is your one-stop shop for football content. We've got it all here over on our socials and on our podcast. And I appreciate you being here. Without any further ado, we're basically just going to jump into the action. First game of the weekend. And it's coming up on Thursday night. As I didn't mean to hide that. As all games, pretty much, every round starts Thursday night. Just about for the season. And this one is a Gold Coast Suns v Hawthorn Hawks game up in Darwin at TIO Stadium on Thursday night. This is probably game of the round, and we get to start the weekend with it. Should hopefully be a cracker. We will find out soon enough whether it actually lives up to the hype. But it looks a good game on paper. Gold Coast, who play Darwin so well, coming off their very tight win over the Bulldogs last weekend against Hawthorn, who are playing some very good football. So it should be a cracker. Looking at this game, head-to-head record, Gold Coast actually have a pretty decent record against Hawthorn. They've gone 6-4 over the last 10 matchups between the two teams. They haven't played since round 5 last year, which, if you think back to that point, Hawthorn was still playing pretty average football, but Gold Coast did win it by 53 points. That was up on the Gold Coast. Time before, they're only playing once a year at the moment, the last couple of years at least, and the last 2 have been quite comfortable victories to Gold Coast. So a bit of a positive spin on things there. As I have kind of gone through time and time again, last year and again this year, Darwin football is a lot different than football anywhere else in the country. There's no doubt about it. They're just completely different conditions, and Gold Coast adapt to that really well. It is very similar to Gold Coast conditions, just a bit more extreme. So it makes sense that they adapt to it pretty well. So I wouldn't imagine that this will be any different. Hawthorn are probably a team that can play those conditions pretty well. I would have said the same about the Bulldogs last week, and Bulldogs did, in all honesty. They only lost by 10 points, had a chance to win it. Granted, I think Gold Coast were probably the better team across the night. But Gold Coast have a chance here. They've won 4 of the last 5 against Hawthorn. I'm certainly not ruling them out, either team out in this one. Gold Coast are going to be going in surprisingly a lot more favourites than perhaps I would expect, being that it's Hawthorn, who are sitting 3rd on the ladder, had a pretty solid start to their year. Haven't put too many feet wrong. They weren't outstanding last weekend, but they did get the job done. So they're going okay in that regard. You look at the record for both teams across the last 5 weeks. Both are 3-2. They've done it different ways. Gold Coast gone win, loss, win, loss, win. Whereas Hawthorn went loss, loss, win, win, win. So 3 wins on the trot for them. Granted, against all bottom-rated teams at the moment on the ladder. West Coast, Richmond and Melbourne all towards the bottom of the ladder. Read into that what you like, but they're getting the job done against teams they should. Whereas Gold Coast, have had a much different sort of period where they had that loss to Richmond, which was very disappointing. They then had the Q clash against Brisbane, which is a total forgive. Brisbane are still one of the best teams in the competition. And then their wins have been pretty solid. North Melbourne, they smacked in that last quarter. Sydney, after a slow start, they turned that around and absolutely dominated them. And then last week against Bulldogs, looked comfortable winners with about 5-6 minutes to go before the Doggies kicked 4 quick ones, just to make it interesting. But they got the points, and that's all that matters in the end. So this one shapes up as an interesting game. Gold Coast are a team that dominate field position quite a lot. So it'll be interesting to see if they can make that work here. Whereas Hawthorn, they're a team that kind of does things differently most weeks. Like, they're never that predictable. They are a team that do like to have the football in their hands, not always going fast. They like slow build-ups, and that works for them. So look for a lot of pressure in this game. Look for a high-intensity game. It's probably going to come down to the last quarter, who's got the fitness edge at the end, I think, because it's going to be blow for blow, I think, and it could be an absolute cracker. So Thursday night football, watch out for it, because I think this could be game of the round. It certainly looks it on paper. There are some good games this weekend, no doubt about it. So it is a weekend that I'm looking forward to the football. Last weekend was a tough one for tipping, and it turned out that way, and it was a very good weekend of football action. Hopefully we get something close to that. Maybe not as good, because that would be asking too much. But hopefully we can have a good weekend. The two key forwards are going to be the highlight of this game, I think. Ben King leading the Coleman. He's 27 goals in his 8 matches so far this season. He has been outstanding. And Jack Gunston on the other side of the fence. Where has he come from? I know he's been good for many years, but his form this year is the best we've seen him do in multiple years. He's kicked 23 goals in 7 games. He's having a really, really good season. Helped by the fact that the team is going really well, but he is certainly doing a very good job up in that forward line. So that's a massive story in this game, I think. Those two going head-to-head. Ben Long as well in the forward line for Gold Coast has been really good this year. Obviously, Hawthorn have some really good small forwards as well. So it's just a game that I think across the board is going to be an interesting one. I think Gold Coast midfield players are probably above Hawthorn's midfield players in terms of individual talent, but Hawthorn's midfield as a core and the way they work together probably is better than the Gold Coast one. Defence-wise, they're two of the better defensive teams, in all honesty, in terms of just their defence, back six, both very, very good. So I think this game just shapes up as a good all-around match, and I am very much looking forward to it. We'll get to my tip shortly at the end of this episode, but that's everything I have for you in Gold Coast Hawthorn matchup. Friday night, SCG at Sydney Carlton. These two teams played each other last year, I believe, up at the SCG on a Friday night then as well, I think, from memory. It may not have been a Friday night, but it was definitely a night game at the SCG last year. And Carlton dominated the first quarter. I think they kicked the first 5. And then from that point on, it was one-way traffic. Sydney ended up winning it by 52 points in an absolute domination. That was their only matchup last year. 2023, they only met once in the home and away season. Sydney did win that one as well, but they did meet in an elimination final, which Carlton got over the line by 6 points. Overall, it's going game for game over the last couple of years, so maybe this is Carlton's turn on that. Most of the numbers from this season so far suggest Carlton probably win this, which is a little bit strange because Carlton haven't been going fantastically, but Sydney certainly not doing great. I think they're doing better than what their record shows, but they're not doing great. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be an interesting one, you'd imagine. The midfield battle will be hugely important in this game. Sydney's midfield not going as well as it was this time last year. There's no doubt about it. That's probably their biggest downfall so far this year. But Isaac Heaney could always jump back out and start performing back to his better levels. Chad Warner's starting to show some really good form over recent weeks, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him continue that. He's probably been their best player so far this season. Obviously, they're still missing Errol Gould and Callum Mills, so they've got plenty to come back, whereas Carlton, they got a good win last week. They needed that win, and if they can string this one as well, that will fully have them back in the race for finals. There's no doubt about it. They're not that far off. They're sitting 10th on the ladder. A win here would be huge for them. After a weird sort of start to their season, Sydney are going into this one as favourites, which might be a little bit surprising to some people. But it's mainly due to their defence. It's been really, really good. Their back line, Silvani going back has been huge for them. There's no doubt about that. Their offense has been average, but their defense, their team defense, is going really well in my eyes, at least. And Sydney, kind of similar story. They're just wasting opportunities. There's no way they should have lost that game last week against the Bombers. The amount they dominated that second half, they just dug themselves into a hole, and then instead of getting out with efficiency forward, they kept missing. They wasted opportunities, and they end up losing the game. And they've only got themselves to blame, in all honesty. So they're 3-6 for the season. It's not been great, and they've only won 1 out of their last 5, which, granted, was a really good win against GWS 2 weeks ago. But you take that out, and their last 5 weeks does not look great. 30-point loss in Adelaide to Collingwood. 8-point loss in Sydney to Port Adelaide. Once again, a day where they wasted opportunities. Kicked 10 goals, 17 that day. Gold Coast Suns, they lost after leading quite comfortably in the first half at points. And their other loss last week against Essendon, once again, when they kicked 8 goals, 15. So 2 games in the last 4 weeks have been losses due to poor kicking in front of goal, which is such a crucial part of AFL football these days. And Sydney at the moment are just not doing that. Probably lucky that both teams kicked poorly against GWS, because that day they kicked 12 goals, 15 as well. So it's starting to stack up, and it's starting to look quite bad for them if they don't start turning that around. Their season could be completely different. They could be 5-4 easily if they had a kick straight over the last month. So they're 14th on the ladder. There's still a chance to build themselves back into this season. It's not season over yet. You think what they did last year, it's still the same team basically as last year. So if they can get on a run like they did early season 2024, you just never know. But at the moment, they're just too wasteful to be winning games. And if they do that again on Friday night, they do not beat Carlton. There's no doubt about it. Carlton, they've won 4 of their last 5. Unfortunately for them, their one loss was an absolute schmozzle when they got smacked by Adelaide. But their other weeks are going okay. Granted, West Coast, North Melbourne, lower ranked teams, and even St Kilda last week, not probably a team that will be contending for finals, but they beat Geelong by 3 goals a couple of weeks ago in a game where they kind of dominated it throughout. So they've had some big scores about a month ago when they went 121 and 153 against West Coast, North Melbourne. Their last 3 weeks, they've defended really well, conceding 76 against Geelong, 50 against Adelaide, 110 against Adelaide, sorry, they only scored 50, and then 62 when they against St Kilda. So their defence, when it's working, is really good. Adelaide are a really good offensive team, so I guess we kind of forgive that one. I don't think Carlton are a team that are contending for top 4 at the minute. They're not playing anywhere near good enough football, but they certainly are playing good enough, I think, to be a top 8 contender. They just have to make use of these sort of games where they're playing teams that are out of form. They need to perform in this one and get the points, basically, if they want to be a team that's genuinely playing for finals this year. They're 4-5 for the season. which is pretty good after losing their first 4, in all honesty. Big game for both teams. Loser, it's not season over, but if Sydney lose this one, it's a long way back. And if Carlton lose this one, it's not the end of the world for them. They still have not the hardest run home. They've got a pretty easy season schedule, in all honesty, but this is probably their opportunity, I guess, to really stamp themselves back into the finals race. I know it's very early in the season, but yeah, that's how I see it. Next up, we move to Saturday football. This is going to be, helps if I click on the buttons correctly, Collingwood versus Adelaide / Kiwana. We will use their names as much as we can this week that they are actually using. Obviously, Sir Doug Nicholls round. This is week 1 of 2 weeks for that. I find it a little strange that they call it Sir Doug Nicholls round and it's a 2-week thing. Happy for it being a 2-week thing, don't get me wrong. I just think maybe call it something other than round. Anyway, that doesn't matter. That's beside the point. We're here for football, as we always are. And it's Collingwood Adelaide, and this is going to be an interesting one. It's MCG, which certainly swings the needle to Collingwood, although Collingwood have a very good Adelaide Oval record. And they also have a very good record against Adelaide, albeit a lot of close matchups. They continually are winning the games, but they're always close. It's a crazy matchup. Adelaide in form, Collingwood back in form as well this season. It should be an absolute cracker, this one. You look at the history over the last few years and how many close ones there's been. Collingwood won by 4 points last year, which was at the MCG. 2023 in round 15, Collingwood won it by 2 points. In round 7, they won it by 1 point. So the last 3, if we go back to 2022 in round 18, they also won by 5 points. So Collingwood have won the last 4 matchups between these teams by a combined total of 12 points. That is insane. Absolutely insane. 2022 round 2, Collingwood did win by 42 points, but then the time before that, they only won by 5 points. 2020, Collingwood won it easily. Same with 2019, 2018, and then 2017, there was a draw. So plenty of close matchups between these two teams over recent years, but Collingwood have the absolute wood on them. You got to go back a long way to find the last time that Adelaide beat Collingwood, and I'm not saying that's... I mean, it's eventually going to finish up that streak. There's no doubt about it. Will this be the time? Adelaide will certainly be hoping so, and maybe, in all honesty, this could be a really good shot for them. Collingwood are going in quite heavy favourites, not massive favourites, but certainly comfortable enough favourites. And that's because it's in Melbourne. It's because of the record they have against Adelaide. But this is Adelaide's chance. They've got the tall forwards. No Darcy Moore for Collingwood. So Collingwood are going to be playing smaller players on probably Darcy Fogarty. Frampton, I'm assuming, will go to Thilthorpe. Howe will probably be on Tex Walker. And that will leave maybe Maynard on Darcy Fogarty sort of thing. It's going to be an interesting matchup down that end of the ground. You get that sorted, but then the Adelaide smalls / medium-sized forwards in that lineup are also really good. Ben Keys, how do you stop him? Neil Bullen and Josh Rochelle, all really good up in that forward line as well. So they have plenty of options down there, and it's going to take Collingwood defence that has been pretty solid this year, albeit they've conceded slightly more than they would like over the last couple of weeks. It's going to take all hands on deck to get that victory, I think, for Collingwood down back. Second on the ladder v fifth on the ladder. Obviously, last time Adelaide went to the MCG was earlier this year. It was against the Bombers, and they smoked them 160 to 100 in a really high-scoring affair. Collingwood won't want that here. They will not want this game to be 160 to 100 and anything. They won't even want it to be. They'll be happy with an 80 to 60 win. If they can keep the scoring to a minimal, they probably win this one. Collingwood won four of their last five. They're only lost that 3-point loss to Geelong 2 weeks ago. Other than that, they've scored pretty well. 109, 105, 107, 87, 97 over the last 5 weeks. So pretty consistently in between that 87 and 110 range. Defensively, it hasn't been too bad. 78, 53, 66, 90 and 83. So the most they've conceded in that spell is a 90. A couple scores under 70, so that's pretty solid from them. Adelaide is a team that overall this season has been very good at scoring offensively, at times conceded a bit more. However, that's kind of changed over the recent weeks. Obviously, there was that low-scoring game against GWS that we kind of forget about. But 50 against Carlton is all they conceded, so that was a pretty good result. Overall, 3-2 over the last 5 weeks, 6-3 for the season. Both losses, I guess you can kind of forgive. The Geelong one, they should have won. They were 7 goals up and threw that away. And then Fremantle, they never really were in contention for the win. They only lost by 18 points, but they were always trailing by that sort of margin and never really threatened. But then 3 good wins in that period as well. Obviously, GWS 4 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, smacking Carlton was a really good win for them. And then last week they played Port Adelaide. In all honesty, Port Adelaide were all over them, especially in that last quarter, but they held on really strong and they got the win. And that's all you need to do in the end. At the end of the day, is get the win. It's going to be offense v defense, I think, and that's going to be the one thing in this game that sways it either way. Is can Adelaide's forward line get on top of Collingwood's back line? Absolutely, they can, but will the rest of Collingwood's team defend as well as they have over previous weeks this season? It's not about the back six for Collingwood. It's about team defence. It's about not letting teams transition. It's about cutting off the option that they want and making them do what they don't want. And that's what Collingwood have been really, really good at this year. And that's what's going to be the difference in this game. Because I think Collingwood's offence certainly will be good enough to score reasonably well against the Adelaide defence. Collingwood has a very different forward structure than most other teams. A lot of smalls, but also a couple talls, but they don't rely on goals from the talls. They don't rely on goals from anyone. It's kind of just an all-in thing that they do, and it works pretty well. And Adelaide's defence isn't the best defence in the competition, so it's going to be an interesting matchup up the one end of the ground for Adelaide's offence, and I think that will be the main factor. Whether Adelaide can get through, get over the back and cause Collingwood trouble, or whether Collingwood can stop their transition and stop their scoring, basically. If they do stop them from transitioning the ball well, Collingwood will win this. If Adelaide can get it through a few times, it might just break the floodgates, kind of like what GWS did to Collingwood in opening round. Moving on to the next game, and we've got 2 games at once on Saturday evening. This is a weird little time slot that they've gone and put together. We've got GWS and Fremantle playing at the same time. Port Adelaide and Geelong are on. So 4:15 time is the time to start games this weekend, apparently. I don't hate that time slot. I don't know if I love 2 games being on at once at that time slot, but that's okay. It's not up to me. So first up, we're looking at GWS Fremantle. Obviously, Fremantle going by the name of Walyalup this weekend. This game will be at NG Stadium, so GWS home game for this one. On Saturday, 4:15, GWS going in quite strong favourites. Fremantle in horrible form. They have not travelled well this year. Everything says GWS should win this, and it's going to be hard to find reasons that they won't. GWS just better across the ground. They're a team that dominate ball possession, field position, a lot of things. They don't dominate clearances, so Fremantle should probably get the edge in that regard, but outside of that, it's hard to see other areas of this game that Fremantle will control. You look at the matchup over recent years, certainly the last 2 years, GWS have won both matchups. They won by 9 points against Fremantle last year, late in the year, which Fremantle were hoping to win because it would have put them into finals. 2023, GWS won by 70 points. Back before that, though, Fremantle had a pretty good run. They won 4 out of 5 before that against GWS. So it's not all doom and gloom in the history books for Fremantle here, but their current form is what is the issue, I think. If we have a look at the form of both teams, neither of them going especially great. Both of them 2 and 3 across the last 5 weeks. But GWS had the better start before that. So GWS 5 and 4, sitting 8th on the ladder. Fremantle 4 and 5, sitting 11th on the ladder. GWS coming off a really good win down in Geelong against Geelong. Granted, it was a tight contest, could have gone either way, but they got the 4-point win, which just broke their little bad run where they'd lost 3 weeks in a row before that. One against Sydney, one against the Bulldogs, and one against Adelaide, who at least 2 of those 3 will definitely be contending for finals this year. And before that, they beat St Kilda quite comfortably, but not hugely comfortably. Meanwhile, on the Fremantle side of the fence, they've lost their last 2. One of them being at home, which was the concerning one against Collingwood. On the road, they've been atrocious this year. They lost 2 weeks ago against St Kilda by 60 points. At that point, St Kilda were playing some horrible football, so that was a bad one. 4 weeks ago, they lost to Melbourne by 10 points in Melbourne. They've also had another game in Melbourne, which was against Geelong. Not in Melbourne, but at GMHBA Stadium in Victoria at least, and they got smacked in that one as well. So they haven't travelled well this year at all. So that is a concern heading east to play GWS this week. And I think for that reason alone, we're probably looking at GWS as our tip in this one. Yeah. That's pretty much sums it up, I think, in all honesty. Fremantle should win it out of the centre, but they haven't moved the ball well, especially the last couple weeks. Granted, Collingwood don't let you move the ball too well, typically, but they just had no answers. And the week before against St Kilda, they were even worse. They just stopped starty, not taking the game on anywhere near often enough. And their midfielders have probably been not the cause for that at all. That's not what I'm saying here, but the reason they've looked so bad is perhaps because Brayshaw did play really well last week, but the week before, him and Sarong were both quiet. Last week, Sarong was quiet. They rely heavily on their midfielders to get big numbers, and when they're quiet, they don't. The whole team looks a lot worse. There's no doubt about it, in my eyes. So the Giants will go in favourites, and that's pretty much the long and the short of this game. Moving on to the next one. Same time, big game. Adelaide Oval. Hang on, let me change this over. It's Port Adelaide versus Geelong. So Port Adelaide going by Yataputi this week. I'm sorry if I butcher any of these names. I will try and get better at them, but Port Adelaide / Yataputi versus Geelong Cats at the Adelaide Oval. Big game for both teams. Port Adelaide need the win. Geelong, won't say need the win, but would very much like the win because they've looked like the best team at times this year, but also their record doesn't suggest that. So, Port Adelaide 13th on the ladder, Geelong 7th on the ladder. It's obviously at the Adelaide Oval. Both teams have pretty good record. Not a pretty good record, pretty even record against each other, in all honesty. It's kind of gone game for game over the last couple of years. They obviously met in the qualifying final here at Adelaide Oval last year, and the Cats absolutely smoked them by like 84 points. Other than that, they met one other time last year, and Port Adelaide won it by 6 points down at the Cattery, which was a Friday night fixture from memory. And yeah, Port Adelaide looked good that day. So it's a bit of a hit and miss agenda, I guess, in this matchup. If you look at the stats, I guess, for this year, pretty much across the board, Geelong just look a lot better. Port Adelaide have been getting plenty of the football, just not using it very well. Not efficiently, not great. Whereas on the other side of the fence, Geelong at times look like an absolute dominating team, especially going forward. But at other times they don't at all. So make of that what you will. You look at the record of both teams. They're both, once again, 3-2 across the 5 weeks. However, Port Adelaide have lost their last 2 coming into this game, and one of them they looked atrocious, whereas Geelong at least won 2 weeks ago by 3 points over Collingwood, but 2 losses either side of that, one against Carlton and one against GWS. So both teams in weird spots, there's no doubt about it. Port Adelaide looked a lot better last week, just lacked that final conversion, especially late. They certainly had chances to win that one against Adelaide, but 2 weeks ago they were atrocious against Bulldogs when losing by 90 points, which is their second 90-point loss of the season. There wouldn't be too many teams that have had good campaigns and lost multiple games by 90-plus points in a season. And to have done that twice in the first 9 weeks is even worse. And even their wins, they beat North Melbourne 3 weeks ago, but it wasn't fantastic. They only won by 9 points. North certainly put in a really good effort after quarter time in that one. They beat Sydney, but Sydney were very wasteful over in Sydney. And they were absolutely awesome against Hawthorn, especially in the first half. They were 80 points up in that one at one point. Hawthorn did come back, but it was game over, really. And Geelong are kind of similar in a way. They go and beat Adelaide and then Hawthorn in a 2-week stretch and look really, really good. Then they lose to Carlton, who weren't playing fantastic football. And then they beat Collingwood in an absolute nail-biter, one of the games of the year so far, and then lose to GWS at home when GWS are in some pretty average form. So it just suggests that maybe Port Adelaide win this one. Geelong have a habit of losing to teams that aren't in the best form, but then they go and beat teams that are playing good football. So it's a weird story for Geelong. There's probably more to it than just that, but on face value at least, it's a little bit interesting, I guess, in a way. Numbers suggest Geelong win, but am I confident in that at all? Not a chance. Not a chance. We've got one standalone game on Saturday night. It's the Doggies and the Bombers. This will be at Marvel Stadium, and hopefully will be a good game. Both teams are wanting this win. Both teams in pretty good form, in all honesty, even though Bulldogs obviously lost last week. The history of this matchup goes heavily on the Bulldogs side, 8-2 across the last 10 matches. However, the Dons did beat the Doggies last year with a really good performance. Early season, round 5, it was at Marvel Stadium, and Doggies just were atrocious that day. I remember the game distinctly. Bombers did make use of their chances, kicked 15-6. Bulldogs were 9-13. But it was more than just that. It was all around the ground. The Bulldogs just did not look like their normal selves. And so maybe we forget that one and go back to thinking Bulldogs will be comfortable because they, other than that one, have a pretty good record against the Bombers over the recent 10 years, I guess. What do we make of it outside of that? Bombers going okay. A lot of people saying that, who have they beat this year? And while that is kind of a valid thing, they've been beating the teams they're playing. And that's the long and the short of it. They've won 4 of their last 5 with their only loss coming against Collingwood on Anzac Day. Yes, they've beaten Melbourne, West Coast, North Melbourne, Sydney, who are all below them on the ladder. And their 5th win was also against the team below them, which was Port Adelaide. But still, you can only beat the teams that you're playing. And over the last 6 weeks, they've been doing really good in terms of winning games of football. And that's all you can do. Have they looked pretty? Not really. Have they scored well? Not overly. They have defended really well, though. And that's the main thing. So, in that 5-week stretch, they've gone conceded 55 against Melbourne, 75 against West Coast, which was slightly more than they would have liked. 62 against North Melbourne and 63 against Sydney. The one outlier was when Collingwood managed to get 107 against them. But once again, Collingwood are a different beast than most teams. However, the Bulldogs are a team that can score. So this will be a massive test of this Essendon backline, Essendon defence. Because the Bulldogs do score. Their last 5-week stretch, they've gone 97, 127, 113, 131, 96. So they've scored above 96 5 weeks in a row, with 3 of them well over 100. It's going to be a test both ways. Does this Bulldogs offense continue to score really well, or does the Bombers' defense restrict them? I am on the side of, I think that the Bulldogs will open them up, but they have to use the ball better than they did through the middle last year. I can't see a reason why they wouldn't. They're playing some really good football. Even last week, they only lost to the Suns by 10 points. They were right in that, though. They had a chance to win it late, but just couldn't quite. They were absolutely outstanding against Port Adelaide 2 weeks ago. They were really good against GWS 3 weeks ago. They absolutely smoked the Saints 4 weeks ago. So they're playing some really good football at the moment, the Bulldogs. And it's hard to tip against them because of that. I think this Essendon side is showing some really good signs, and it would not knock me off my seat to see Essendon win this. I think they're doing a lot better than a lot of people give them credit for. They're playing football, they're playing who they're playing, and they're playing some good football. It's not outstanding by any stretch of the imagination, but they're getting the job done. They've got some really good young talent coming through. So some positive signs on Essendon, but it's a game that Bulldogs should win. If they are genuine top 8, top 4 chance, which I think they genuinely are, they win this one. That's the long and the short of it. Yeah, pretty much that's all you need to know about that one. We move on to Sunday football. And we lead off with the Tigers and the Kangaroos. 2 weeks in a row we've had a Sunday bottom of the ladder clash. Not the dead bottom, but close enough to the bottom clash. 16th Richmond v 17th North Melbourne. Both teams are actually playing okay football lately. Not expected to do much this year, either team. But it's an interesting one. North will go in reasonable favourites. It's at the MCG, which swings the needle a little bit towards the Tigers, I think. Doesn't mean they'll win by any stretch of the imagination, but does swing it a little bit in their favour. If the Tigers win this one, wowee, what a season that will have been for them already. They're 3 wins, 6 losses. A lot of people probably considered that they would be 0-9 going into this game. So the fact that they are 3-6 is fantastic. North Melbourne 1 win, 1 draw from their 9 games. That draw coming last week. So interestingly enough, this is a very important game for both teams, I think. It's going to be a matter of not who's worse, but it's going to be who's better. Let's be honest. 5-5 this matchup over the last couple of years. Richmond put up a really good fight against North Melbourne last year at Marvel Stadium in round 21. Couldn't get over the line. The Kangaroos did the job in the end, but a lot of that was due to accuracy in front of goal. Kangaroos were 14-6, whereas Richmond were 10-17. You go back over the last few years, Richmond have a decent record without being outstanding. They've won 5 out of the last 8 against Kangaroos. You got to think Richmond were very good across many of those years. They won 3 premierships in that spell. So you would kind of expect the Tigers to have the better record in that period. But, yeah, that's also how it shapes out. Tigers have won 2 of their last 4. Obviously, that Gold Coast win was amazing, fantastic performance. They also beat West Coast last week in a nail-biter. Meanwhile, Kangaroos have looked okay over the last couple. Last 3 weeks have been better. Even 5 weeks ago against Gold Coast, they were in that game in the third quarter. So I think they're going better than their record suggests, basically. In an alternate universe, they could have won 3 of their last 3 games. And all of a sudden, they could be sitting 3 wins, 0 draws, or even 4 wins, 0 draws, and be sitting just outside the 8. There is a world where that is a possibility. They just maybe lack that finishing touch right at this point that allows them to get over the line in these games. Just through, I guess, lack of experience over the last 10 years, maybe not that long, last 5 years of winning games of football. So I think that is a major thing that's happening at the moment for North Melbourne. And once they start breaking that pattern a little bit and occasionally getting these wins, all of a sudden they'll grow with confidence. And I think the rise for them will come quickly out of seemingly nowhere because their record looks really bad at the moment. But I can still see them being a team that wins 7 or 8 games this season. So don't write the Kangaroos off just yet. I think they have to come out and beat the Tigers this week. They have no choice. If they lose to the Tigers this week, it is really big panic stations for them. But if they come out and do what they should, which is beat the Tigers, all of a sudden things start looking a lot better for them. They start getting a little bit more confidence. I'm not 100% sure on what their matchups look like over the next month after that. But going into them with confidence, maybe they can sneak another 1 or 2. I mean, they should have potentially beaten Port Adelaide 3 weeks ago. They had every chance to beat the Bombers, and then last week they certainly had every chance to beat the Lions. They just wasted their opportunities. They had a lot more shots than Brisbane. So, yeah, that's basically the sum of it. Kangaroos have to win. If they want to ever be a team that competes again, or at least in the next 5 years, they need to be winning this game. Second game on Sunday, we head to the Gabba. It's Brisbane versus Melbourne, who are playing as Nam this week. It's going to be a game that, I mean, on paper, looks pretty one-way traffic-wise to the home team in Brisbane, but you can just never fully write Nam off. I don't think record between these two teams pretty strongly in favour of the Lions. Over the last couple years at least, they've won 4 of the last 5. Before that, though, it was very much the other way. These two teams have met a lot over recent seasons. Twice last year, twice the year before, 3 times in 2022 with a semi-final matchup between them. Twice in 2021 with a qualifying final match between each other. So they have played each other plenty of times over the recent 5 or 6 seasons. And yeah, last couple of years has certainly been more sided towards Brisbane. However, most of them are close-ish games. Last year, at the Gabba, Brisbane only won by 5 points. 2023, round 18, Melbourne won by 1 point. 11 points in 2023, round 2. So there are quite a few close games between these two teams. However, it just on paper doesn't look like this one will be. Brisbane's defence is going fantastic. Their offence is solid. Melbourne's offence looks terrible at times. They're sitting 15th on the ladder. Their recent form has been a lot better, but it's just not a game that I'd be tipping Brisbane to lose. Their 5-week stretch is 3 wins and a draw across their last 5, with the loss against Collingwood being off a 5-day break, so you kind of forgive that one. And North Melbourne draw was a disappointing one on the weekend. I think they'll regroup and get over that pretty quickly, but it's not great on paper, but I wouldn't read too much into it. They're a long way ahead of where they were this time last year. And it might just be a Mother's Day curse for the Lions. 2 years in a row they've drawn on Mother's Day against teams that certainly end up below them in North Melbourne this year and Adelaide last year. Meanwhile, Nam have looked a lot better over the last 5 weeks. There's no doubt about it. 5 weeks ago was bad against Essendon, but after that they've been really good. They beat Fremantle in Melbourne. They then beat Richmond. Granted, Richmond have not had a great season. They then went over to the West, beat them by 32 points, West Coast. So really good there. And then they were really good against Hawthorn for 3 quarters last week. Should have probably been 3 goals up at 3-quarter time. Just wasted opportunities. Hawthorn did kick away from them, but it would have been interesting if the game was a little bit more in Melbourne's favour at 3-quarter time. Hawthorn probably still win, but a really good showing from them. So they have been better, but this is a really tough match and one that you just expect Brisbane to win. Strange things happen in football. I don't think this is one of those strange results, though. We've got one game to go, and it's probably not the most exciting game of the weekend, in all honesty. It's going to be the late-ish game. Not late Perth time, but late-ish Eastern time. 4:40 kickoff for Eastern States. It's West Coast, St Kilda. West Coast will be playing as... I'm going to absolutely murder these names, but I'll give them a go. Watilj Marawa? Walitaj Marawa, please feel free to correct me. And St Kilda will be playing as Euro York this week and next week, obviously, as well. 18th v 12th on the ladder. West Coast need a win. Is this the one they do? Look, in all honesty, it's as good a chance as they're going to get, and it's not a good chance at all. St Kilda are going to go in heavy favourites, as they should. West Coast have been atrocious this year. St Kilda have won the last 4 between the two teams. On paper, every single stat just about, St Kilda look better than West Coast. There is no doubt about it. Does that mean that St Kilda win? Not necessarily, but they certainly should. They played each other last year twice. St Kilda won them both. They met 2023 just once. St Kilda won it. They met in 2022. St Kilda won it. So you got to go back to 2021 for the last time the Eagles beat St Kilda. And it's based on what we've seen this year, it's hard to say that West Coast will be a chance. They're obviously 0-9 this year. Granted, they nearly got their win last week. They've had 2 close games. Twice they've lost by 2 points this season. Once against Essendon. I was going to call them S Coast. Essendon over at Optus Stadium. And then last week against Richmond by 2 points at the MCG. So they've had a couple chances, but you take out those 2 results and they haven't looked that great. They were okay against Brisbane, but the rest of the games pretty average. St Kilda had a weird run. There's no doubt about it. They're 4-5. They started the season pretty positively, and then it all kind of fell apart pretty quickly. GWS loss was okay 5 weeks ago. The Bulldogs game 4 weeks ago was atrocious. They looked okay for the first 5 minutes and then absolutely got pumped for the rest of the game. And then the same thing happened against Brisbane. They just absolutely got pumped down at Marvel. But then absolutely demolished Fremantle the week after. They were okay against Carlton. They certainly had their chances. Carlton probably the better team on the night overall, but St Kilda were in it. They only lost it by 15 points. But you just can't see a world where West Coast win at the moment. Something tells me that if they are going to win a game, it would be this one. I don't know why. But maybe this is it. It might be absolutely stupid of me to say that, but maybe this is it. Maybe this is West Coast's first win of the season. I can't see them getting too many this year. They've been playing some pretty average football, but Sunday evening game against St Kilda. Weird results happen Sunday evenings, guys. Maybe, just maybe, This is West Coast's chance. Let's not put it in the books as a win just yet, but maybe they're a chance. I don't think there's too much else to say about this game. It should be St Kilda winning. Will that happen? Who knows? We'll jump into my tips for the weekend as we see it. And this is how I've done it on Wednesday night. This will be my official All Aussie Rules tips. My tips could change by the time I go to do them online in my tipping competitions, but this is how I see it, at least for now. We've got Gold Coast beating Hawthorn by 11 points. I think this will be a cracker of a game. I'm going Gold Coast. Just because it's in Darwin. If it was on Gold Coast, I'd probably be with Hawthorn, but Gold Coast play Darwin so well. Sydney to beat Carlton by 4 points. I have zero confidence in this game. Zero confidence. I've gone Collingwood by 12. Once again, not overly confident. I can see a world where Adelaide win this. I think this will be potentially the other game of the round. I have no confidence in either team. Not so much playing badly, but just both teams are capable of winning this one. I've gone Port Adelaide by 8 points over Geelong. Little bit of an upset. I'm not convinced with Geelong. Every time I think that they're the team to beat and they're going well, they let me down. So I just kind of feel like that's what's going to happen again. They lose games that they shouldn't. They'll probably come out, get 130 to 60 victory. But for now, I'm going Port Adelaide by 8. GWS, did I say that one? No, I didn't. GWS to beat Fremantle. Fremantle just not playing good football at the moment. You have to go GWS. Saturday night, I've gone Bulldogs by 13 over Essendon. I think Essendon will put up a good fight in this one. I just think the stars of the Bulldogs will get them over the line. Their midfield is so good at the moment. Bont, Richards, Fraser, they're just so good. So I didn't even mention Libba. Best of them all so far this year. So yeah, I'm going Bulldogs in that one. Then we move to Sunday games. North Melbourne should, I put this in like massive brackets, should be too good for Richmond. I've got them by 16. Brisbane, in all honesty, will be too good for Melbourne. 30-point winners. However, Melbourne, I wouldn't be surprised to see them put up a fight. St Kilda by 35 over West Coast. But as I was saying before, I'm starting to swing a little bit towards West Coast. Maybe by the time tipping actually comes around, maybe, just maybe, I will tip West Coast. I doubt it, but you just never know. So that's my tips for the week. We'll now look at the All Aussie Rules win percentages. This is based on record over the last few years. The ELO system that I have, I talk about it most weeks on the podcast, a lot of the ELO ratings go up on my Instagram as well, so go check them out. So you use that plus home ground advantage. Doesn't take into account record against each other and stuff like that. It's purely just current form rating and whether it's at home or away or a neutral venue. Basically is the long and the short of it. Gold Coast 45.43%, which puts Hawthorn as slight favourites in this system, even if they're not favourites in real life. In actual odds. Sydney will be favourites against Carlton, 63.8%. Collingwood 71.2% against Adelaide. GWS 62.65%, which also is pretty accurate to the odds. So far the only one that isn't is the Gold Coast Hawthorn game. Port Adelaide, here's one that's different, 54.9% against Geelong. Geelong are actually favourites. Bulldogs will be favourites against the Bombers, 61.4% according to the All Aussie Rules rating system. This one's an interesting one because Kangaroos will be favourites, but Richmond just nudge them in the market. Well, not in the markets, in the All Aussie Rules rating system. 50.4% for Richmond. Tight one indeed. Brisbane for the second week in a row are the most likely to win. They didn't do it last week. Can they do it this week? They're 84.5% against Melbourne. And the final game of the round is St Kilda going in heavy favourites, and the rating system suggesting the same 73.9% chance of winning this one. So that's all 9 matches. It's the rating system. It's the tips for the weekend. All done. Big weekend of football. I'm praying that we're going to get another good one like we did last week. I hope you've enjoyed. Thanks for sticking around if you did for this whole video. If you're just going bits by bit, that's fine as well. I appreciate you nonetheless. Don't forget to like, comment, let me know who you think's going to win this weekend. Big weekend of football coming up. Hit that subscribe button or follow. Go to the YouTube if you're not on the YouTube and hit that subscribe button there because I want numbers to rise. I post videos most weeks as well as the podcast over there, so go check them out. Social medias, Instagram goes off, TikTok's growing, so go check them out. I appreciate you all. This is All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. I'm Jay. This was episode 31 of 2025. Thank you for being here. We'll be back on Monday to review all 9 matches. Peace.